You still having a problem getting over that, huh?
Okay. All right, we're sure glad to have everyone here tonight, and we want to welcome those that are watching on internet. I really appreciate the comments that I get at church on Sundays. I didn't realize as many are watching as are, and it's certainly refreshing to know that we're reaching all the people that we are with this. To get started tonight, I'd like to ask Pastor, if you would, to open us with prayer.
Absolutely. Let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we ask for your wisdom and your knowledge as we go forward. Father, we ask for revelation and understanding. Father, we understand, God, that you have given your Son and he died for our sins. And we ask, God, that you would help us learn more about you as we go forth on our day-to-day journey. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I'd like to start off tonight with a passage. It's back to this, some folks are saying, well, why are you paying attention to all this stuff? And it's really so many different places in the Bible that we're told to be watchful, and we're given the results of being watchful. And I'd like to start out tonight by reading a passage. I was reading the other day, and I've gotten a habit of trying to look at passages and trying to figure out why are all the words in there, or why are all the ideas presented, when it could have been a shorter sentence with the same idea. And the one I came away with this week was in Luke chapter 15, verse 20. And it's very familiar. We all know the story. And it's talking about the father that his son had went away and his son come back, and they were going to kill the fatted calf, etc. So anyhow, but 15:20 it says, "And he arose and came to his father. But when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him." The phrase in there that not puzzled me, but I wondered, why is this included? Why does it tell us, but when he was yet a great way off? And what that shows, I believe, is that it shows the father never quit watching. Amen. And was watching on a daily basis. And that's why it's talking about he's watching away far off. And he's watching and watching and watching, never knowing when the son was going to return. So if he saw him coming away far off, it means he intently watched every day, waiting for his son to return. And that's the story to us today. That's why we're doing what we're doing, because we need to be watching out on the horizon, what's coming. And we know what's coming. What we want to be coming is Jesus returning. And, the rapture is going to take place. And then I think that ties in with the fact that in especially Matthew 24, Jesus tells us this is things you need to be watching for. And you don't wait till they all happen and you're kind of picking up history. Jesus wanted us to be watching afar off. And he gave us the clues of the things that we need to be watching for. And that's what we're doing. So I thought I'd just throw that in. The thought come across me as I was doing some Bible study this week. So much has happened in the last 2 weeks, and some of it is very, in my opinion, Pastor can chime in on this, very monumental. And I say that from the standpoint, what I'm going to start off like I usually do every week is in the Mideast. The biggest thing that happened this week in the Mideast, if you didn't pick up on it or not, was that Saudi Arabia and Iran are now going to go back to changing diplomats and having diplomatic relations. It's a big deal. All the countries, number one is Iran and Saudi Arabia don't like each other. You've got Shiites and Sunnis, and it's back to this conflict. But what has happened since Biden walked away from Afghanistan? We have seen the total shift in the Mideast. Okay, who are we going to align with? Who's in charge here now? Because we've always been the one with the heavy hammer. Right. Well, who put this deal together between Iran and Saudi Arabia? China, of all people. And they're puffing their chest out on it too. And so China's response was they said they are dedicated to having an active role in the reform and development of the global New World Order. And I'll be visiting this again here in a few minutes. At the same time, back last fall in November, Khomeini, the leader in Iran, says, "Death to America will happen in the New World Order, and we will no longer," meaning the United States, "will no longer have an important role to play. Iran plans to export the revolution and bring Islamic rule to the rest of the world." That's what he was talking about in November. The thing of it is, this is a monumental shift in the Mideast, with China taking the lead. And the United States had nothing they could say other than, "Oh, this is a good deal." They complimented on the fact that Iran and Saudi Arabia are talking. So it's just an example of what's in play since we left Afghanistan in a shambles, run away from it. And what you're seeing, and we'll get into this more here in a little bit, you're seeing this is just another example of the major shift in the New World Order. And like I've said before, the United States is no longer going to be the superpower of the world. And you're seeing it right before our eyes. We're seeing a revolution on a worldwide basis right before our eyes. It's playing out. You any comments on that?
Yeah, I was thinking a couple times on how the United States is decreasing, and I'm just kind of thinking that, and I don't know, I'm just following my thought here. Wonder if it's not a big calamity to where we're not the leader on a global stage. Wonder if we voluntarily step off.
Yeah.
And what that would be is more isolation. Said, fine, we got people say we don't want to be the policeman of the world, and we're raising taxes, but yet we're giving to all these countries and stuff. Wonder if we get a government there who I guess the correct term would be isolationist, but really we can produce everything we need on our own continent. It's because we agree to stuff that we do with world business. We produce our own cars, we got our own weed. If we wanted to, we could, supply just us. And so I was wondering, like, if America would get an appetite to just step off the stage and let them go at it on their own. So there's two schools of thought. You could it could be a tragic event or something like that. Our economy could shrink, all that kind of stuff, or it could be where the powers that be could be by design that we step off the world scene. And there's a big contingent that thinks, we're always apologizing for the United States to where we mess in everybody's business too much, and they would love for us just to step out of everything. Because there's no government that's perfect, even though our government can be wicked and stuff like this. But take our influence out of everything, only then will you really see. Like when we, for example, when we pulled out of Afghanistan, and we were there for 20 years, so there were young people who never knew Afghanistan without America. Never knew. There was girls who grew up and went to school, girls who, jobs like this, and only the older people were afraid when we pulled out because they knew what it was like without us being there. So when we voluntarily just left, and then the kids didn't know why the parents were so afraid. Now they can't go to school. The government's cracking down. People are coming up missing. Whatever. Now they say this is what we're afraid if we're out. So I'm saying is, if we step out of more places that they say they don't want us, you would probably see a lot of this going on. And another thing, I don't know if you saw this, but I saw a clip from, I think, Israeli News, and they said there were two people in the Knesset, is that their parliament or whatever it is, who put up a measure to make it illegal to share the gospel in Israel,
Right.
pointed at Christians. And if you talk to someone in Israel under 18, it's a year. Now, first time around, I don't think it'll. But what I'm saying is that could really drive a wedge between the American church, the European church, and everybody else in Israel. You might think, how does our relationship with Israel get strained? if, all the money we give and everything, and they were saying like, okay, Christians aren't necessarily welcome, which some of them don't, and they really are getting to that point, that would leave Israel by themselves as far as all the money the church pumps into the Middle East, all the people doing like that, and to outlaw our faith, and that is because if you know that, that's the three Abrahamic religions hotspot: Israel, Islam, and us. See, we haven't had to play politics. It's always been Israel and Islam going back and forth. Oh, they want us to enter it now, and saying we're not welcome. So now, the Islam don't want us there. If the Jews don't want us there, and we say it's a holy site to us, that's adding the third rail to the conflict in the Middle East when it's been basically two rails, us and Israel, and then it'll make a three-pronged rail, and that'll be interesting.
Down some, but we could definitely survive on our own. But yeah, it would prompt others to.
Because we've always been reluctant. Isn't that true for World War II? The Allies kept trying to get America into war against Hitler, and we just kept resisting until we had to get in.
Yeah.
And if certain things didn't have happened, we probably wouldn't have gotten that war.
Right.
And then because, if you remember, that's when Pearl Harbor's going on. We could just focus on that and just left Europe to itself. But if I'm not mistaken, Doug's better at this than I am. I'm not mistaken. How long was it? I mean, for years, so they kept trying to send things over to White. Hey, could you, try to get us in? So I'm saying the way things are, if we're reluctant to, we could go a whole span and being reluctant of getting into those things when they really start throwing big bombs like that. Because we could do what we're doing now in Ukraine. We ain't gonna put no foot on the ground and like that. We'll send you some stuff, but we're not going to, to do that. We could kind of adopt that. Like I said, doing that would be our decline. As far as like says, I mean, I don't know if we would deal with just all North American things like Brazil and stuff like this, and Canada and stuff like that. But Canada's a shaky on human rights, getting kind of shaky on human rights too. So it's kind of one thing to think about. I'm just saying there are two rules of thought that you could either it'll be a really a bomb or taken out, or the rapture, or we voluntarily retract. Now I don't know if that means that I don't think we would ever take out all of our military bases. Do you? We might not get involved. I mean, but we would probably have military bases because we have military bases everywhere, don't we?
Where?
We everywhere in Europe and
yeah. I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, we've walked away from bases in the Mideast. We're no longer the power there, and the point I'm getting at here is why this is such a big earth-shaping thing. Israel now has lost what they thought was another friend, probably, and that's Saudi Arabia. See, Saudi Arabia and Israel have opened up with the Abraham Accords. They looked like they were getting closer together, but then this comes up, and now Israel has to question, well, what's going to happen if Saudi Arabia and Iran, and then I'll be getting into it more here in a minute, Russia enters into this big time there too, and I'll give you that here in just a moment. So it's a big deal that China put these two together. It weakens Israel's position in the Mideast, there's no doubt about it. Also in Israel, we'll cover a couple things here, and I'll show you why Israel's really, Amir Safarti, I'll quote what he said. He said they're in the most precarious position they've been since 1963, or 1973. And I would agree with him. I was involved in the 1973 deal, even though I was in Iceland. We were involved with what went on then when Israel really was on the ropes, and we pulled them out. But he says it's the most precarious time since then. The terrorists continue to attack almost a daily basis in Israel. One thing that came out was really interesting. There's a direct correlation between the number of terrorist attacks on Israel and how much money we give to the Palestinians. Somebody looked that up, and it makes sense because they pay the terrorists' families, if they're martyred, they pay their terrorist families for their martyrs. And we've talked about it before here. They celebrate every time there's a terrorist attack. They go out on the streets, hand out candy, and everybody's happy. Well, there's a direct correlation between the number of attacks and the money we give them, because Trump basically cut the money off. And when he did, the terrorist attacks went down. Biden comes in, first thing he did, reinstated the money to the Palestinians, terrorist attacks go back up. I thought that was interesting. Mm-hmm. The other thing that's going on with Israel, which is sad right now for them, is this fighting over their Supreme Court changes, what they're trying to get done. And so they've got people in country protesting. It's called a season of disruption, and the problem is there that they've even got reservists that are refusing to come in and do their training. See, the Israeli armed forces are different than most other countries. They don't have they have a dedicated army and air force people and navy, but it's not big numbers. What they rely on are the reservists, and everybody in that country, other than the ultra-Orthodox Jews, which are relieved from duty for religion purposes. Everybody in that country serves in the Army or the Air Force or the Navy, and they practice all the time. I mean, this is just a constant thing. So when these reservists refuse to show up, they're protesting Netanyahu's party wanting to revamp their Supreme Court. And that's what the whole deal is. So there's a great deal of civil unrest. They've even talked about possibility of civil war erupting in Israel. That comes from their president himself. So it's a big deal. So they've got that going on. They've got the terrorist attacks increasing. And now they've got the Saudi Arabia-Iran ties coming. I'm going to add some more to it. Biden, of course, he's getting his 2 cents in on their Supreme Court, which is none of their business to begin with. But he's supporting the people that are protesting Netanyahu. In fact, it was interesting. Netanyahu has never been invited to the United States since he was put back in office. And it's a rub. What they're doing, they're trying to rub his nose in the ground because they don't like Netanyahu. And Bibi put out an edict last week, told his people, you quit working with any of the Americans until I get invited to Washington, D.C. So the ministers over there that's in his government, they will not meet with the ministers of the United States right now on anything. So the other thing is going on, the embassy in Israel has slowed down the paperwork. If you have people that's like wanting to do some visas or travels and things of that nature, it has to go through our embassy, they're dragging their feet, slowing that down. The other thing that's going on, and which back to what Pastor was talking about, is, and I've said in there before, if I was Israel, I would not, with the administration in place now, and it's not just Biden. It's Rubio, it's Graham, you got the leading Republican senators are voicing themselves. We'll get into that in a minute, like in the Ukraine war. The other day, Lindsey Graham and Mark Rubio, they're after on that drone that Russia put down. They're ready to go to war. They wanted to go start shooting Russian airplanes out of the air. I mean, that's their direct words. I mean, it's nuts. It's crazy. These people that are in charge right now, it looks like they're just trying to take us into war. It really does. I mean, when you look at it. But the other thing the United States is doing, before, if there was going to be a vote in the UN that was against Israel, that was unwarranted, we would step in and not allow the vote to take place. Well, we've not done that. We're allowing the UN to vote now on things to subjugate Israel to potentially, censor them and things of that nature. The other thing, to show you how serious things are in Israel, Ben-Gvir, again, the head of Homeland Security, he shut a radio station down in Israel the other day because they were inciting riots. So it's serious. It's really serious. The other thing's going on with Israel. It's another important thing. The Jordan-Israeli peace is in jeopardy. Reason being, the finance minister of Israel was in France. Yeah, he was in France. And I wrote down the comment he made. Here's what he said. They were questioning him about the two-state solution thing. That's what they're all pushing. They want a two-state solution, two-state solution. He said, okay, who was the first Palestinian king? What language do the Palestinians speak? Has there ever been a Palestinian currency? Is there a Palestinian history or culture? There isn't any. The answer, and that's facts. And Jordan just screwed themselves into the ceiling. In fact, they're working on recalling their ambassador from Israel. So that makes another neighbor. You look at what's happened just in the last 2 weeks with all this stuff I'm talking about. And we've got one more. Syria is being reopened. And by that I mean, after 2011, and back in 2011 when Assad went on really genocide on part of his people. That's, if you remember back, that's when Assad was accused of using gas to kill some of his own people, et cetera, et cetera. And there again, it's back to a religion thing. All the countries over there turned their back on Syria. They pulled their ambassadors in, quit having diplomatic relations. They just wouldn't relate to them at all. That's all turning around. And one reason it's turning around, Syria, Assad, just this last week, has invited Russia to come on in. He wants Russia to build more bases, military bases, and maritime bases on the Mediterranean. And since that's happened, you've got a handful of the other Arab countries now wanting to bring Syria back into the fold as part of the Arab League. See, they were turned out of the Arab League, which was all the Arab countries, or there's an organization called the Arab League. Syria was put out of that. They weren't invited anymore. Well, they're wanting to bring them all back in. What happened this last week, Israel bombed the Aleppo airport again, where Iran was bringing weapons in to Hezbollah and Hamas into Aleppo. And this time they hit it pretty hard. They even ruined or shut down one of the runways. They bombed the runway. And Russia is in the process of moving their S-400 missiles into Syria, which is their top anti-air missiles. Putin's made several statements telling Israel, you need to cool it, you need to knock this stuff off. And now Assad's bringing Russia in. So, and the reason that's happening, Russia has not done that until Israel decided to help Ukraine. They decided to start providing some assistance to Ukraine, so Russia's putting the hammer down. So look at what's happened in Israel just in the last 2 weeks of the things I just talked about. All of them major items. Any comments on that?
No, not too much more what you've covered. It's like for the two-state system, we're going back to the words of Jesus. They understand this: a house divided cannot stand. And if in the world, as many occasions, are trying to divide Israel into two states, which Israel has been rejecting ever since it became a nation. And because if they did a two-state solution, it's just like anything else that we're talking about. That's not going to be the end of it. That's going to be the beginning of a different level.
Yeah.
You know, and so people think, well, that would just solve it. Oh, heck no. That'll be a beginning of a whole nother level, because that's why the Palestinian government hasn't accepted anything. They've, even when Israel has given some big major victories or allowances, they have always said no, because they want everything or nothing. And so we would say, they said there hasn't been a good treaty that they haven't walked away from. They walk away from everything. And so that's why Israel keeps saying, we don't have a good faith partner. They don't want to negotiate. And the only thing they want is they want the whole thing. So if you give them half, it's just going to be a little bit for they take whole, because they really don't want them there. Really, really the Palestinians are Canaanites, right? And really they should be a part of the Arab speaking countries. And so it's funny to me how we help Ukraine because Russia took a piece of it, but yet we want to negotiate for somebody to take a piece of Israel. I mean, isn't that kind of the
Yeah.
same, kind of thing? I mean, why don't they have autonomy over their own land? Why don't they, do that? But, we're going to run and help, which I'm not saying it's a bad thing or a good thing, but we're going to run and help Ukraine because the bigger countries next to them tries to carve it up. But yet Israel's surrounded by all these major companies, countries that want to carve it up. And we're like, oh, yeah, you ought to let them do that. But then Biden would say, oh, no, they have to win and they have to do this. Well, the thing is, it's going to be, if Russia left today, it's going to be a long road back for Ukraine.
Yeah.
For infrastructure, for everything. It'll be a long road back. And if the war ended today, the money we send would not stop. Now, when we send tanks, we have to send money to rebuild. I mean, it'll be, taxpayers be on and on. And the thing about it is, why are we the only, we're NATO, but why are we the only one putting up the big bucks? And so it's never even, what we give is never even. They look to us to give. So I'm saying, like, if we did stop doing some of the things, some countries would just collapse if we stopped giving.
Yeah.
If we stopped, some countries would just fold up.
Yeah.
Or they would get invaded. They would do all, if we pulled back the way, people yell at us and say,
South Korea.
yeah, if we didn't enforce, the North and South Korea thing and stuff like that. I mean, because they're all testing it. China would already have Taiwan.
Yeah.
If we just say, well, we're taking our ball, we're going home.
Yeah.
But while everybody's complaining, they're not realizing that.
Yeah, and it,
Sue has something to say.
Sue?
We also have protectorate nations from World War II.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sue says we have protected nations, in which we have an agreement to protect them in case of something happening. And she's absolutely right, But the thing of it is, back to what has happened is that the current administration has showed they'll walk away. That's the big problem. And that's what has set up, as I said before, we're watching a step-by-step changing of the guard. We really are. We talked about that this is what Russia and China, and not just Russia and China, there's a bunch of other countries that want to see us too. Pastor's talking about this Ukrainian deal, and we'll start talking about that a little bit. One of the big things that came out this last week, the G20, which is the top 20 economic countries of the world, they get together and they hobnob about economics. India is really frustrated. In fact, the Indian Prime Minister said last week, look, you guys need to get over this Ukraine thing and quit messing with it because they can't get anything done. They're trying to move some economic things on a worldwide basis, and India is a major player. India now either is or will very, very soon be the largest population in the world. They're surpassing China, and they're a major economic force in this world.
They're designing to make their own jets.
Yeah.
Because when we went to I mean they're quick, they're smaller, and they're quick, but they're coming into their own, and they're making their own jets, and other countries are buying them, whatever. Because there's certain things that jets and stuff like that we don't share. If we do sell it to you, it's a stripped down version.
Yeah.
And you put your own hardware in it. So they saw a niche to get in, and they're becoming a world player on the military stuff. Because didn't they send some military stuff too or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
But their weaponry's getting pretty good too.
It reminds me of when I was working through this, the Hemingway book. I don't know if you've ever been a Hemingway reader or not, but the Sun Also Rises, one of Hemingway's novels. And in that, and I don't remember the two players' names, but there's two characters in that book. And the question one asks the other says, how did you go bankrupt? And his answer was, 2 ways. Slowly, a step at a time, and then all at once. That's exactly what we're seeing with this. And we're seeing the same thing in the banking crisis And we're not even going to get into that tonight because that's a real deal here at home, let me tell you. This banking crisis, folks, is not anywhere near solved. Don't believe. Here's the thing. You know, I made a comment tonight. Let me see if I can. I wanted to caution people to not believe everything they're reading on TV because we've talked about this before. Two reasons. They ran a test and they looked at robot postings versus human postings. Okay, and they asked people. They said, "Okay, look at these postings on Facebook or any of the social media. Which one do you think is written by a robot and which one's written by a human?" They could only determine. They only picked 10% of the robot ones, and 41% of the human postings. They said that's a robot. Yeah, stop and think about that. So that shows you. Now, here's the other thing. The fact checkers that we've had ever since this deal with the pandemic and all this. Almost said the word there, but I didn't. Anyhow, ever since the pandemic, you know, they wanted to come up with fact checkers. That's been a big deal. The government's, you know, promoted that. We have fact checkers, and we're going to call you out. All right. Prime example. Here in the last couple months, I think Pastor even mentioned it in one of the sermons. They want to do away with your gas stoves and your gas furnaces, okay? So the word was put out, they're going to do away with your gas stoves. Well, the fact checkers, and you can go look this up online, said, oh, no, that's not true. That's not what they're doing. Well, technically, they're not eliminating all of them, only 96%. Yeah. So you got to be careful, even if you've got something where the government's coming out or some agency saying we're checking the facts and that what they're saying is not true, when in fact it was. So be careful there too, okay? Be careful of some of the stuff you're reading is written by robots, and you can't tell the difference. That they've proved.
That was a big problem with Twitter. Elon went through and half the stuff was generated by.
Right.
Yeah,
Elon Musk is a prime example, you know. And God bless him. I mean, he stepped up and put some truths out and let us. He's one of the reasons why we're able to look at some of this stuff with a better eye than we had before, and that's a good thing. Well, let's go back into Europe. You picked up on the drone that was lost. I thought it was kind of funny.
In the Black Sea?
Yeah.
Okay.
The one that, I don't know if you watched the video or not, of the Russian jets coming across and releasing fuel on top of the drone. That, as an old Air Force guy, was really funny because what they were doing was wetting on that thing. You stop and look at the analogy. That's what they were doing. They were telling the United States, here's the deal on that drone. That drone was flying black, meaning it was putting out no signals that it was there. It was within Crimean, or right at the edge of the Crimean air defense zone, which Russia has established because they own Crimea. And it was flying towards into Russian. It was heading into Russian airspace. Russia, you know, and don't get me wrong. I had somebody made a comment. I was talking, I think, at the bank or something. They said, well, you're kind of a Russian, or you're kind of pro-Russian. I love the Russian people. I know Russians. But they think I was pro-Putin. Putin is a living antichrist, okay? We've talked about that before. Satan has antichrist on hand. Satan doesn't know the time or the place this is going to happen either, okay? The only person knows when the trigger's going to be pulled is God himself. Even Jesus tells us that, right? Only the Father knows the time, okay? So that means Satan doesn't know when he's going to need an antichrist, right? Okay. So throughout history, he's had, in my opinion, multiple antichrists on hand that he could pull from. Hitler, prime example. Hitler was a potential antichrist at that time. There's no doubt about it. Well, we've got him today. You got Xi Jinping, you got Putin.
Amen.
You know, there's multiple people that he could pull from in a given situation. So, no, I'm not. Putin's a potential antichrist in my mind. I mean, I have no love for that man at all. But so much of the stuff that I get irritated when all the media and everything want to hammer when we set the stuff up. It's our fault. We were testing Russia at that time, and Russia was within their rights to take that drone out, okay, based on international law. All right. So what do we do today? Last night? We send 2 B-52 bombers across the Baltic Sea, headed straight to Moscow, practicing bombing Moscow with cruise missiles. Russia launched 2 fighters to turn them back. Now look, this stuff's been going on forever. We used to do it in Iceland. I can tell you in Iceland, one of the big deals, the Russian bears, the big bears, they're heavy bombers, have a refueling capability, and they have this big spotlight on the back of that thing that they shine down on the refueler to help them make the hookups. We used to launch our fighters out of Iceland to intercept Russian bears coming across the Arctic when they broke the DEW line, the Defense Early Warning line that we have. When they break that line, we had to launch 2 fighters to intercept the bombers coming across. Did it all the time. We'd fly up, and the Russians would take that spotlight and shine it in pilot's eye and blind him, give him night blindness. Used to do that all the time. Because I remember there was a major that came back to the United States on leave, and he come back with this real high intensity light and had our guys wired in these F-102 so he could go pull up beside the Russian bomber and shine a light in their eye. I mean, that stuff goes on all the time. Has forever. But the thing of it is, why? In Lord's name, why would you fly, just with all the tension that's over there now, why would you launch 2 bombers loaded with cruise missiles and practice a bombing run on Moscow with all the tension over there? They're just antagonizing things is all they're doing. And like I said, Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, they're ready to go to war. And these guys are senior senators. They know better.
That's going to take us just one young guy to make a mistake.
Yeah.
Like I said, they ran into a drone. I mean, if they're doing all that stuff and if it was another pilot or something like this.
Same thing's going on now in World War II. We were talking about that, Pastor talking about it earlier. Japan kept incrementally encroaching on China until hostilities broke out. We're doing the same thing again. The same type little games being played that Japan did to China, which set off World War II in the Pacific. And it's just crazy.
What is going on in Japan?
They're arming themselves to the teeth as fast as they can. Okay. And they're doing joint exercises with the United States and Australia and New Zealand. And that's been going on. There's been a lot of exercises. Japan's really worried about Korea.
And Australia's in that too, isn't it? Australia.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on.
Australia's worried about China too.
But yeah.
Australia's really worried about because they come in there and like you're doing that, they're trying to buy up amounts of Australia and certain things, and then there's no love lost between China and India because there's a border dispute right there.
Right.
And they go back and forth on that. I mean, I forget how many lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then it's when I talk about incremental things, you just go back and look what the Biden administration did. This thing in Ukraine broke out. First thing we said, Ukraine wanting Patriot missiles. Joe Biden himself stood up and said in public, we're not sending any Patriot missiles. What did we do? We sent them Patriot missiles.
He just didn't know. He still don't know.
Then he said, then they're saying we need Abrams tanks. Joe Biden again, his own words, we're not sending tanks to Ukraine. What are we doing today? We're sending tanks to Ukraine. Then he stands up, they're wanting F-16s, fighter aircraft. Biden again says, we're not sending F-16s. I remember watching that.
He didn't get the memo.
Yeah.
There's somebody
We're not
kinda like,
sending
wait.
F-16s to Ukraine, so what are we doing? We're training Ukrainians in Oklahoma right now to fly F-16s so that when they get them, they can fly them.
Because Poland's sending a bunch of MiGs, right?
So-
Like 12 MiGs.
Pardon?
In Poland, sending them 12
Yeah,
MiGs.
they've been sending MiG, they're outdated, they're old Soviet era MiGs. The thing of it is, it's these incremental steps I'm talking about. They just, one more. And then like Pastor said, somebody makes a mistake and all hell breaks loose. That's what we're faced with. Talking about how in control we are. Zimbabwe, you've heard me talk about BRIC so many times, and we've talked about all these other countries wanting to join BRIC. Zimbabwe just this week said, we want to join BRIC. So you see the countries lining up. And I talked about, India said we just need to get on with life and let Ukraine, in their opinion, is, you need to remember this, Ukraine is a regional problem. It is not a worldwide problem. And the Ukraine problem was set up by us. And that's fact. Obama created that. They decided, I mentioned this once before, there was an agreement between Western Europe, the United States, NATO, and Russia when the USSR was dissolved. There was a commitment made in certain areas would never be in NATO. Ukraine was one of those. All right? It was a buffer. Poland, you've got Poland sitting over here, they're in NATO. You've got Russia sitting over here and Ukraine sitting in the middle, and that was a buffer zone. Well, we decided, Obama organization did, well, we're going to bring Ukraine into NATO. And to do that, we've got to have a regime change in Ukraine. We made the regime change. That was our doings. And Russia's just responding to what we did. And it's a regional problem. Russia took back what originally was Russian. That's what they set out to do. So it's not a worldwide problem, but we're making it a worldwide problem. And that's what the Indian Prime Minister was saying. Get over it. It's a regional problem. Be done with this and let's get on with life. China, okay, here's the big deal. Their second huge thing that happened. Putin and Xi Jinping met this week. 2 days. They were together a long time. And they came out shaking hands, grinning, calling each other friend. Xi Jinping made the comment that they are making changes in the world order that hasn't been done for 100 years. And he's absolutely right. That's a true statement. The changes that Russia and China's making. And China's leading it, okay? Russia's not. China's leading this, but you need to understand they're in lockstep right now. Here's an exact quote from Xi Jinping this week, I think Tuesday. He said this Tuesday. China and Russia are ready to stand guard over the world order based on international law. Okay? Now, the other thing you've got to understand is that China has what they call their new world order is called a Global Civilization Initiative. All right? This is what they've put together. Xi Jinping went to Russia. He has a plan for peace in Ukraine. The United States won't even talk about it. They just dismissed it. The United States does not want that war to end, I can tell you right now. Our administration does not want that to end. It's obvious. Anyone with logical feelings of all the disasters happening over there, they are just devastating that country Pastor was talking about. They've killed hundreds of thousands of people. The slaughter's going to go on. In fact, the slaughter's going to get a little bit worse for the Ukrainians when Russia makes this last move. And don't believe what what you're reading on the media, how Ukrainians is holding their own, and they are not. They are beat. They are literally beat, and there's going to be thousands more of them slaughtered by Russia before this ends. Yeah, someone that has a peace initiative, regardless of whether you think it's good or bad, and what Xi Jinping brought was a ceasefire agreement, and then let's talk about the details. Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you, if Russia would agree, everybody cease fire, and let's talk this thing out. The United States put the quietus to it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to hear it. It's not right. Here's what's happening. Leaders of political party and organizations from around the world, now I'm talking about this Global Civilization Initiative. This happened over the last couple of weeks, and some in the Biden administration's part of this. Leaders of political parties and organizations from around the world have hailed the China proposed Global Civilization Initiative, saying it has great relevance together with the Global Development Initiative and Global Security Initiative. Now, pick that up. You got Global Civilization Initiative, you've got a Global Development Initiative, and you have a Global Security Initiative. That's a three-pronged thing that China's put together. The purpose is to build up countries' consensus on addressing mounting global challenges, and get this, in terms of peace, security, development, and harmonious coexistence. That's the purpose of this. All right? Now, these are exact words from Xi Jinping. And as we stand here today, they are putting together just what I said. They are replacing the United States as the global cop. They're replacing us as being the big dog on the block. And it's happening right in front of us. China, Xi Jinping says they plan to have an active role in development of the New World Order. And that's what this is all about. This stuff is huge. It really is huge stuff. And to go along with that, China just has, in the last 2 weeks, reported they have created a digital China Bureau. It's controlled by the CCP economic arm of the Chinese Communist Party. It coordinates the integration, sharing, development, and application of data. Here again, it's another incremental step for the beast to have his mark. Okay? Control it. It's further establishing this mark of the beast system that's going to have to be put in place. Along with that, Amazon rolled out this week. They are rolling their Palm Scan out to other businesses. Pantera Bread's one of them. You go into Pantera restaurant to eat, swipe your hand. You don't have to touch anything. You don't have to take your billfold out. You don't have to use a card. Just scan your hand. Another little step, everybody. Amazon's put that together. And now they've got it perfected to the point they're giving businesses the opportunity to do that. Yeah.
Just thinking how much, somebody could do that.
Yeah. So anyhow, big deals. Any comment?
No, I was just thinking how, like Noah said, how that would spread. If that was me, I'd use Dylan's hand. Say, wave your hand, and I'll buy what I want to buy. But they started doing that some thing early on in different hospitals and stuff. I'm pretty sure that it'll increase with that to where to speed in your check-in process. If because when you come in, they want you to check in, you're hard breathing, you're sick, whatever. It'd be if they're checking in, and even if you're unconscious, they just scan you and then take you back And that would be a selling point to like, okay, once we scan you in, all your records will come up, everything you need. It's good in emergencies. And like, why wouldn't you want to do that? With your kids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they started in some hospitals like doing the finger thing during the pandemic and stuff like that. So I look for that to spread even more so.
Oh, it obviously is. I mean, Amazon putting it out on a commercial basis, so that's obviously a pretty sound system.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about on the home front. The other thing I was going to point out in Europe, inflation's still running pretty rampant. There's still farmer protests and there's riots in France. I mean, all that. Europe is a mess. Poland has said that if they feel Ukrainian is losing, and I can't imagine how they don't know that that Ukrainians have already lost. I mean, it's not the fact they're losing, it's all over but the shouting from what I'm able to glean. Poland said they'll enter the war. They'll take Russia on, is what they're saying. They're going to move troops and armament. Poland's pretty substantial military, but they said that they're going to get involved. So that just come out yesterday.
Because I think, aren't they worried that, and somewhere down the line they'll be next?
Yeah,
So why
they are, because Ukraine and Poland share a border.
I mean, what everybody around them is allowing. They're just.
Yeah.
They
Right.
think that
You're
they
right.
might be next,
Yeah, they are an island. You're right. Okay, let's talk about on the home front. I just got some notes here. I don't know what we're doing time-wise here. 7 o'clock, we're in pretty good shape. On the home front, I mentioned the banking crisis is for real, folks. It's not a made-up thing. I think it's been intentionally made. The Federal Reserve, in my opinion, and I follow it pretty close because I serve on local bank branch, board of directors. So I follow it, always have followed this stuff pretty close. The Fed has absolutely no idea what they're doing. It's amazing again. We have these people that's supposed to know so much running these organizations, and a lot of it's basic economic theory. It's terrible. But one reason I think it's being fomented as a crisis, and remember we said first year, 2023 was going to be the year of crisis after crisis after crisis. And man, was that a good prediction, right? I mean, look at the crises we've had already, and there's more coming. FedNow is a new service to usher in digital currency. And what FedNow is, they're going to allow lending institutions, banks, I don't know, brokerage firms, stock brokerage firms are probably included in that. I don't know this for a fact. But it's an instant fund transfer 24/7. So that's something that's never been available before. It's a 24/7 deal to where this bank can send this bank money like that, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's being put in place to bring the digital dollar online. And I think, if I remember right, I read somewhere last fall, August is the time frame for the digital dollar to make its appearance. It'll first be made in this type of system. It'll be a digital dollar between lending institutions. And then the next thing will be businesses will be able to be involved in it. And then eventually they'll do away with their money. That's where it's coming. Excuse me. China and India already have this in place. We're behind. You've heard me mention this before. United States is almost 1.5 years, 2 years behind a lot of other countries in putting this digital stuff in place. Like I said, 2 largest countries in the world is already using it and have had it in place for a while. I talked about the Amazon Palm Scan. Talking about data, we talked about a little bit when that balloon was floating across. I made the comment about that the United States has balloons up 70, 80,000 feet continually. There's usually somewhere 3 to 4 that we know of. Some of them are squawking, meaning that they have a transponder saying, "Here I am," and you can track them. But some of them are black, like that drone was over the Black Sea. It's not putting out anything. There's no transmitter. Those things have been there for several years now. They are recording everything. And it's funny to have one thing come out just here in the last couple of weeks. We talked about that there's so many Freedom of Information acts. They've been sued, like they sue the CDC or whoever. If you want that, what's supposed to be public information, they won't give it to you. Other than Freedom of Information Act, and if it's not classified, you can sue them and make them give you the information. So a lot of stuff, and it takes a couple years to get that done. Well, a lot of that stuff's just now coming out. CDC bought the phone data on everybody's phones in the United States to track what people were doing during the lockdown. Yeah. Now they claim there wasn't anybody's name or anything attached to this. Yeah. But yeah, they bought, CDC paid to get the data on what to who was talking and where they were at and locations and all this. Yeah. That's what those balloons are doing up there. They record everything. And don't kid yourself, they're recording everything.
So what are they gonna do with this data?
This data, I ought to look that up a little bit. Well, what they were wanting to do, they were trying to track movements, how people were moving. They're supposed to be locked down, are you moving or not? And that ties into, we were talking about this 15-minute city thing that they're talking about doing, where they make a city and you're supposed to only travel so many miles a month or whatever, and then all these little things come together. You only travel so many months or so many miles, and eventually what will happen will be, just like I was talking about, Ford now has come out, their newer cars, if you're not paying your mortgage, they can shut your car off. Or they don't have to shut your car off, but they turn your air conditioning off. They turn your radio off because you haven't paid your car payment. That's coming. That was out here a month or so ago. Well, they'll be to where which they can already do, shut the car off. So if you're in one of these cities and you're allotted so many miles to travel and you reach that limit, they're gonna shut your car off. That's coming. There's no doubt about that. And it's because climate is the #1 problem facing the world. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. But remember that. That's what this data was. But the thing that crossed my mind, several years ago, somewhere out west, and I forget where it's at, they were building this tremendous storage facility for data, unbelievably large.
It was in Texas.
And that was done. And I can't remember where it's at or whatever, but all this data is being kept. It's just, just the way it is. Let's talk about climate change for a second. They've come out very strong the last few days. The next 10 years, we always have these 10-year time frames. The next 10 years is absolutely critical. If we don't do something right today, the Earth's going to end in 10 years. I mean, that's basically what they're saying. I had to laugh this year. Or laugh this last week because when this come out, it's coming out of the UN. They're saying, "Oh, we've got the data. This is pure data. We've got all the accurate data and everything." It's just nuts. But look at the things they're doing. #1, they're trying to eliminate, of course, all petrol things, all fuel, and everything's got to be renewable energy. But it's already proven it's physically impossible to do that in the next 10 years. There was another study that just came out yesterday, said we're going to have to have oil and stuff at least past 2050 at the minimum. Well, that's not 10 years. And then you get it's like in Europe. The farmers in France, they're trying to cut their fertilizer, make them quit raising cattle. Same thing in the Netherlands. The farmers are, we talked about that in there before. They come in and they had Paris shut down one day. They took 500 tractors in. They're putting these farmers out of business at a time when we're trying to feed people. And they're making them forcing them to cut back on fertilizer at a time when we're trying to feed people that's starving. And it makes no sense. Get this. There's a town in California, I forget the name. about the size of Connorsville. That's what caught my eye. 21,000 people. We're not, it's a little smaller or bigger than us. They put a ban out. There will be no more gas stations in that community. Okay, so the town grows a little bit. You got more cars and stuff. So now intuitively, you stop and think, okay, how does this not make common sense? All right, you close gas stations or you don't allow any more. The population grows, you got more cars. So one of two things got to happen. They've got to set in line with their car idling to get gas, or they've got to drive further than they used to have to drive to get gas. Both scenarios pollute. Yeah. I mean, there's stuff like that drives me insane. You just think about it intuitively, and it doesn't make any common sense.
Not to mention the fact that where do they think the electricity comes from? You don't make just electricity out of thin air.
Yeah. Well, they like to tell you are with windmills. They like to make electricity out of thin air, but there's a big cost. There's a big cost to that.
I'm just gonna put a fan on my car. Why? I'm gonna eliminate the middleman. Just plug a fan in on my car.
Okay, let's go on a few more. I just got kind of tidbits here. I talked to you about don't believe what you see and hear. Verify it. That's the thing. You got to verify stuff. If don't just take anything and run, because you're gonna get caught. Here in Indiana, Notre Dame is going to host a Queer Holiness Day, and the reason is to honor the gift of LBGT people to the church. All right, I'm not making this up. Biden says if you don't embrace the trans movement, it's close to being sinful. That's a direct quote. The Pope last week said that hell's not a real place. That's a quote. In California, they have a bill in front of their house right now, if it passes, and it probably will. Condoms will be required in all public schools, 7th to 12th grade. All right? Right now, just since in the last 2 months, there's been 70,000 illegals migrate illegally into the United States. Not from Mexico, Canada. Okay? They've got a real problem up there. These people coming across the border. And that border, you're talking about a wide open border. I remember I went fishing up in the Detroit River. Toronto sits on the north side, and you got Detroit on the south side. And as we're fishing up down through there, and we're fishing there at night, and this has been several years ago, I remember thinking how easy it would be to come from Toronto to Detroit across that river. There's nothing, I mean, and that whole border up through there, you think about it clear across the northern United States, it's never been tight, hadn't needed to be. But now they're out rescuing people out of snow, and now these snowstorms we've been getting because they're walking, coming across the border.
You mean Toronto's way up there.
Yeah.
You talk about the Detroit River.
Mm-hmm.
That's a different town.
Let's see. Okay, who's?
We got stopped at it.
Okay, what town? Okay, what town sits on the other side of the Detroit River from Detroit?
What is the town?
Toronto.
What? It's not Toronto.
Huh?
Pontiac.
No.
Anyhow, I stand corrected. But anyhow, whatever Canadian town's on the other side of the Detroit River, it's wide open. You could take a rowboat you could take a kayak or a canoe, and in 5 minutes be in the United States, and nobody would know it because in the middle of the night, because we were up there fishing without lights at night. It was dead dark. I mean, you couldn't see anything. Anyhow, did you see where they grew some antlers on mice? It's back to this genetic engineering I keep pointing out all the time. They took mice, they split the genes, they put chromosomes in from deer into the mouse chromosome, and the mouse grew antlers. I saw pictures of them. That just shows you the crazy stuff. That's the danger. You know, if there was any way to regulate doing some things that maybe really did make sense for the good of man, but there's no controls on this stuff. It's just, that's the same thing, that's what happened with the pandemic. They're over there playing nature, playing God, and they create something that gets out in the system. Pastor mentioned the prison for sharing gospel in Israel. The other thing I had, there may be a new pandemic on the horizon. Have you heard of the Marburg? Marburg is a natural virus. It's been around quite a while. It's a first cousin to Ebola, but it's much more deadly. And there's 2 outbreaks in Africa right now.
Great.
And there's no vaccination or anything for this thing. Just like there's not for Ebola either. And they've controlled, they keep it contained. But this last week, there was a second place that popped up that kind of surprised them. So anyhow, something like that's going to pop. That's why I said there's more crises coming. One of the crises that's coming is this bank thing's going to unfold, possibly. I hope I'm wrong. I totally hope I'm wrong. But it doesn't look good for the economic situation on a worldwide basis with what's going on.
Did you hear the pastor today who said that going in drag is holy?
I didn't see that. Going in drag is holy.
Is holy. And he's using Matthew 23 verses 37 to 39. How often have I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings. And,
It's just delusion.
That's apostate gospel.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, it's going to be apostasy. You know, and it's all of it. I mean, it's just crazy. They'll take anything and throw against the wall and see what sticks. And like I was reading this while he was saying, like it came across my thing, like in I think it's a Democratic run city. And remember, I was telling you guys, Elon Musk really painted it well. He says, what is one of the biggest hurdles for civilization? And he said, depopulation, not overpopulation. And the guy goes, no, too many people. He goes, no. He goes, well, that's what they're saying. He goes, and he told how they did the math, and he says, because we're living longer, but even they are projected, because most of the big countries are worried about it. China's really worried about it. We're worried about it. Our life expectancy is the only reason why we haven't really crashed on it yet. And like I said, it kind of started with my generation. I don't know too many people, if any, at my age and my generation that has, like when my mom had 8 brothers and sisters. In my generation, that's almost unheard of. I mean, you do to get 2, and then you have them in your 30s, and it's getting worse the generations after. And you can see that by everybody, now you can get jobs anywhere, whatever. But one way to offset that they've been talking to the economic development departments, whatever it is all you're gonna do is diversify. You're going to have more immigration to fill those jobs, whatever, to diversify, to get doctors, to attract doctors from other nations and stuff like this. China, like I said, they have whole little blocks in the city where no one lives. And because they did that one child policy so much that that now when it's over, they've already ingrained that in that generation. And but then what I'm saying is like Philadelphia to pay pregnant women $1,000 per month to have kids, and then follow up with 18 months of childcare and stuff to help the birth rate. But it's funny how I thought we were overpopulated. It's funny how that's where they take a big stand on abortion rights. They could just stop abortion rights and redo that. But they're looking for, they got $3 million reserved, looking for to get another 6, and they're paying monthly cash to the girls who get pregnant. I guess they're starting a program. I think they already got like 250 girls in it or whatever. But you got to be in these 3 parts of Philadelphia. If you're in one of those 3 parts, then you qualify to get $1,000 a month. But this is the kicker. It's for anybody who is who makes under $100,000 a year. Dude, that's good. That's good money. But if you're under $100,000, so everybody qualifies. You make $100,000 a year, then we're gonna give you extra. That's they're gonna give you extra. So I think it'll be up to you can get up to 18,000 with all the other different things, so that you don't low birth rate and stuff like this. But on the other hand, we have a bunch of this stuff. On the other hand, food prices and stuff are high, but we pay you not to plant. We want abortion and we want all this stuff, but we're gonna pay you to have kids. It's such a double-mindedness. It's unstable in all its ways, and it's just crazy. It's just crazy stuff. Now, I would say if they weren't so hard posting the other antithesis of abortion and stuff like that, I said, well, that's good. They're helping people do that, but the government's constantly trying to make it easier for you to do away with your kids, but on the other end, pay for you to have kids. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
When has government ever made sense?
And that's pretty much the problem. And I was talking to somebody the other day. I said, you can't use common sense or facts to have a civil conversation with people who are all about feelings. They don't want to hear it. Yeah. If you say, okay, I know you feel that way, but this is the truth. They'll shut you down. So you almost can't reason. Like the Bible says, let's come reason together, and there's a safety and a multitude of counsel.
They become emotional.
Yeah.
It becomes an argument of an emotion.
Well, I can't believe that's how you feel. It doesn't matter how I feel. That's what it is. It's like I feel like it's 10 o'clock. I'm sorry, it's quarter to. Well, that clock's wrong. It's 20 after 7. Well, I feel like it's 10 o'clock. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but it's 20 after 7. And they'll argue with me, oh my God, that's how I feel. That's how I kind of just boil it down. It doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
I can say, yeah, it feels like it's 10, but it's not. It's.
Yeah, well, nowadays they think words hurt. When I was growing up, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Now the words are becoming sticks and stones.
Anybody have any questions tonight on anything?
Windsor,
What's that?
Windsor, it's on the Detroit River.
Oh, okay.
The city?
Okay.
Oh, I did have a
Don't go
question.
there, that's all I'm saying.
I thought you was asking. We had some Windsor.
Good job, Charlotte. Good job.
And when we were talking earlier, had nothing to do really with I was just curious, because it happened before I was born. But in 1948, when Israel was established as a country, who let the Palestinians even go there? They were already there, right? So
There were Arabs that lived there, yes.
Right. So,
And there were Jews. There were some Jews that lived there at that time too.
It was a misstep by Israel from what I got, because they were too. I don't want to speak about, but they were very negotiative and because you could ask that same question is why the Dome of the Rock still there, and because who was it that handed the keys over? Because they were trying to get peace instead of destroying it, which has come back to haunt them later on.
They didn't learn anything from Jesus back then, did they?
Well, they didn't believe it.
They did the same thing.
They don't believe Jesus.
The big point.
No, that's not what I mean. I mean the fact that I lost his name. No, back in Jesus' day, he was trying to keep the Romans from coming down on Jerusalem. The high priest.
Herod or what's his name?
I know. I lost his name. He went to Pilate.
Right.
Right. He answered to Pilate. But he was a high priest.
Wasn't it Capheus or something like that?
Yeah.
And they more or less sold out, even though.
Yeah, I know. Because I actually saw something on the internet I was watching, and it was showing how the negotiations went, and then what Israel handed over and what they allowed to stay there after all that, and all that came back to haunt them today. Right. Because they, if they're going to occupy and do all that, they should have all in there. But they were trying You know, everybody's looking for trying to negotiate peace, whatever. And they were, from what I gather, you tell from history is they had, and I'm not trying to make Muslims or anybody mad or anybody's like, but they had tanks and stuff, and the order was given to blow that dome of the rock because they knew that's where the third temple, blow it up. One of the generals wasn't Ariel Sharon.
Well, the British general marched into Jerusalem and secured it at the end of the war. And then the Balfour Agreement had been in place in 1917. That got put together, and then you're right, there during the Arab-Israeli War. See, that actually occurred after 1948 when the war broke out, and the Arabs decided to push Israel into the sea, is what you was talking about. And what you was talking about earlier, a lot of people fail to realize, or they don't want to talk about it. It's like Pastor was saying a few minutes ago, you get into these liberals that want to make us two-state solution. The Oslo Accords, which Bill Clinton put together, Israel and the Palestinians each agreed that they were going to work on a two-state solution. And there were certain steps they had to take to get there. And Palestinians have never done one thing they agreed to do at the Oslo Accords. Not one. Israel has been over backwards time after time, and the Palestinians have refused to do anything. Question?
She was talking about Joseph Cephas.
CFS, yeah.
So you need to, people need to stop and realize that. And the other two things you need to realize. Number one, the Palestinians have never done anything in good faith. Fact. I mean, you can say all you want to, they've not. They can't prove they've done anything. Israel only responds to the terrorists when the terrorists act. They've not been aggressive in any way on this stuff unless they're retaliating against the terrorist. It's not Israel's doing things to harm the Palestinians. That hasn't occurred unless the terrorists are attacking, or getting ready to attack. So, but the UN doesn't want to talk about that. The thing that gets me, they hammer Israel all the time talking about human rights abuse on the Palestinians. But China, genocide on the Uyghurs, and everybody's fine with that. And there's genocide going on in Africa on a large scale. The Muslims, that's on in some of those countries. Nothing's ever said about that. That doesn't matter. So it's kind of sad.
Great.
Any other questions or comments?
I have one more. I sent something to Pastor today where, I think CBN was reporting that California is introducing a bill where you can't speak Jesus. It'll be punishable up to a year if people are having sexually immoral thoughts or and they said that people won't be able, counselors won't be able to say anything about Jesus or anything like that.
Where was this at?
It was on CBN, but it's in California. It's covered in a certain bill that she names the bill, but we can look at it after.
Okay.
But I just thought, man, it's getting.
We'll look at that next time we get together. We'll find out details on that.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to leave you tonight with a couple of thoughts. Which one do I want to do first? I want to take you to Romans 12:12. As you leave tonight, keep this in mind. And 12:12 says, "Rejoice in our confident hope, be patient in trouble, and keep on praying." And along with that, I want to leave you with a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. And he wrote, "You cannot do a kindness too soon, for you never know how soon it will be too late." So I think both words are very pertinent with the times that we're in now. Hopefully not as much will happen between now and the next time we get together, because I tell you what, the things we talked about tonight on a large scale, this China, Russia joining together, the fact that China's flexing its muscles, the whole thing is they realize that the United States is now weak from a standpoint that they're not going to really stand up and put a line in the sand and hold to it. That started back in the Obama administration when on the Ukraine thing. Obama's exact words was, "That's a red line. Russia, don't cross it." Russia crossed it. We did nothing. And part of that's what Rubio and Senator Graham's talking about. I think they feel a frustration that there's some things that's happened, like the Russian downing of that drone, that we should respond in some way physically. And the problem is it's too late for that. The rabbit's already out and running, and China's the rabbit, and they're running full strength. China will more than likely move on Taiwan, and I really don't think there'll be a war come out of it. I honestly don't. I don't think we'll be in. China doesn't want a war. China wants to control things, all right? China wants to be the superpower that we were, and they're working towards that. And there are just so many countries around the world that want to see the United States taken down as being a superpower. But I don't believe they necessarily want to go to war because look at the Ukraine, the mess that you've got over there. It takes so much money to rebuild and everything. They'd rather take things over and get in control without actually having a physical war. And I really do believe that.
They want to do what they did with Hong Kong, where you just got it back without it's all diplomatic, got the whole nation back, and that economy, and then that brain trust. There's a lot of brain trust in Taiwan.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
it's valuable. And the thing with it, I really have no idea who's running the country. It's not Biden. I mean, that's obvious. I don't know who's pulling the ropes. It's probably a consortium. It's probably Blinken and Susan Rice and a couple others. The biggest problem we've had in the past, we've had military men that would stand up and say, we can't do that, and have some sanity to it. None of the military men in the past, you look at the great leaders we had, the Dwight Eisenhowers and the MacArthurs, and I mean, really all of them abhorred war. They really would do everything to keep from going to war because they understood the cost. They really did. We don't have that anymore. We have military leaders that are strictly playing politics to keep their job. And the point we had some military people try to stand up and say the right things and call a halt some of the stuff, and they got pushed out of service. You either keep your mouth shut and do what the politicians want, and this started back in Vietnam. It really did. We come out of World War II pretty strong. Had a little bit of this in Korea. MacArthur, should have, in hindsight, should have been allowed to go across the Yalu River and take on China at that time. They wouldn't do it. It was all political. We wouldn't be having the problems today. You wouldn't have the North and South Korea problem we have today if MacArthur had been allowed to go ahead and finish what was started. Vietnam, that was such a debacle. That was all politics. Every bit of Vietnam was politics. And, we lost tens of thousands of people to it, young people. But, it's sad that it's went that way, but that's the way it is. That's what we've got today, and obviously it's part of God's plan. And I have felt for a long time that, God's going to take the United States out of the picture as far as slowing down what he's put together. It's going to be the end times. I think we're living that day to day. I become more convinced every day that the time's short. And
because I think even with the bank crisis, let's say we had a bank crisis and a lot of banks failed, that would get a outcry from the American people. Like, look, you need to take care of home. you need to quit doing this. You need to take care of home. You need to get this, we need to get our own home in order, whatever. And then you'll get some politicians who won't recognize the standing that we're a piece of a puzzle of the world, not the whole world in itself. But you will do that, and I'm not advocating for that we get in everybody's business and we throw more money at it. But I said, but I'm not an advocate for we be like North Korea and isolate and be like a hermit thing either. But that would really send off a lot of people, because it's kind of hard if you're in a banking thing and you lose your retirement and your life savings, and then you can see they come up for a vote to send $1 billion over to some people who may not like you, and you're like, hey, isn't that my money that you sent, and I'm broke now? You'd be surprised. There's a couple things. You mess with people's kids, you mess with the money, people change.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, sir.
Pastor said, I think, last Sunday or this Sunday, they, like with the balloon, they might be testing our response time.
Sure.
So, you said where we sent the two bombers over there, maybe we'll just test them back.
Well, we did. We used to do that all the time. Like I said, that's nothing uncommon, all right? But why would you do something like that? You just had a drone incident where they knocked one out of the sky, and you've got a war going on in Ukraine. Who in their right mind would pick that time to send a couple of bombers towards Moscow on a training run? That's why I'm saying it's being stupid. Because like Pastor said, all it takes is one little small, somebody screw up, and it's all over. You start launching nukes. But yeah, it's in my mind, incredibly stupid to do something like that. But they're playing this tit for tat thing, see? Yeah.
I think we're all at a we're standing there waiting to see who's gonna throw the first punch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tensions are just.
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
That wasn't a military decision? Or do you think it came from Washington?
Oh, they couldn't do anything without executive power.
It came from the top down. They had to clear that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, to send bombers over.
But I'll guarantee you, Biden didn't have a decision on it. Yeah, they're not.
Somewhere counting chickens.
It's really sad what we're watching, but it's the way God's putting together. That's part of the big chess game we got going on here, and it's really interesting to watch on a day-to-day basis.
And the only ones that aren't scared are Christians.
Yes. Yep. And those that don't have enough common sense to be scared. Yeah. Okay, we'll close out with prayer. Appreciate everybody tonight. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the opportunity to fellowship together as our church family, both here and online, and we just are so thankful, Lord, that we have this church and we have the leadership here. And we are thankful, Lord, that we're able to freely sit here and talk and comment about the things we do, because we know there's so many places around the world that would be an impossibility. That it just amazes me that, I know in some places of the world, a person has one page of the Bible and doesn't even get to keep it on a daily basis. They have to trade it around, when we have all this information out in front of us to look at and share, and we have your book to guide us through all of it. We are thankful for that, Lord, and we ask for further wisdom and discernment. We ask, Lord, that you will help us keep our eyes focused on the horizon as we watch faithfully for your return. Please be with everyone. Safe trip home. Return us back to this place for our service on Sunday. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Looking at
It
that.
says the Phillies arrived